Welcome to the Filmcast's review of Scream 6. I'm going to read the plot summary from IMDb. In the next installment of the Scream franchise, the survivors of the Ghostface killings leave Woodsboro behind and start a fresh chapter in New York City. Joining us today for our review of Scream 6, she is a writer and editor whose work has appeared at sites like Fangoria, Slash Film, Rue Morgue, and Shudder. Ariel Fisher, welcome back to the Filmcast.
Thank you very much for having me back. I'm very excited to be here.
So, Ariel, obviously the Scream franchise is one that I think we've all really had our ups and downs with over time. You know, there's been some good things and bad things about the franchise. Can you tell us a little bit about what your feeling was heading into this entry in the series? My
standards were high and my expectations were low. Unfortunately, I felt like I was one of very few who was actually deeply disappointed with the fifth installment. So this instant, the sixth one was kind of, how are we gonna go about things? And especially with the idea of heading into Manhattan and things being different, you know, you're kind of getting that Jason Takes Manhattan vibe. So what are we emulating here? What are we going for? So very kind of unsure. My expectations were correct, to put it mildly. I so wanted to love it because the Scream franchise is probably one of my absolute favorites. That and Halloween are pretty much up there. And I'm one of those people who actually really enjoys part 3, although I can admit it is the weaker of them. But this installment is lacking a lot of what makes Scream special. And it tries, it really does. But Kevin Williamson and Wes Craven are a big shadow to sit under. I don't think they had much of a chance after what they did with the last one. But anyways, we'll get into that, I'm sure.
Before I move on to Devindra's thoughts, like what do you think made the Scream franchise special in your opinion?
One of the things that it's often made fun of for is its meta commentary on horror movies and culture, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But that really is a big part of what makes it so special and also really hard to emulate. So there's this expectation that this thing that you've seen made fun of in, you know, the scary movies or whatever is just, you know, oh, it's just the butt of a joke. It's not. It's extremely carefully crafted. It's very intelligently and meticulously put together. And the story and the how and the why of everything is very thoughtfully laid out. And this felt kind of like an emulation of it rather than the actual thing itself. Scream captured something kind of ineffable about horror at the time when it first came out in the 90s. And each installment thereafter was able to kind of tap into something else that made the genre important. This didn't do that. And that's what makes it stand out as a franchise.
Got it. Well, I'm sorry it didn't live up to what you were hoping for, Ariel, but curious to hear what the other guys thought. Devindra Hardawar, what were your thoughts on Scream 6?
You know, I kind of felt similar to you, at least going into this movie, Ariel, because my first thought is, didn't we just review Scream? Like last week, I felt like I just reviewed Scream. I don't know how this movie turned around so quickly. So when that happens, that's usually not a great sign for a sequel. That's usually the studio being like, we need another one. The iron's hot. Let's go. Let's crank out another one real quick. So I was worried this would be sort of like a quick hit, and I had fun with it, but I think there are a lot of problems, and mainly because I really enjoyed the last one because it dared to try new things. It's like they not only knew like that they were messing with like horror conventions, but they were messing with scream conventions, you know, and to that self-awareness was kind of interesting in the last movie. I'm glad we did that rewatch because it was really great to revisit this whole franchise. Yeah. I'm reminded that Scream 4 was really interesting and not like as beloved as it should have been at the time,
Yeah.
because it was doing so many things and was Wes Craven like coming back, and it felt like a new Nightmare spin on it. So I found that interesting. And this movie is just very strange because it's like, it does feel like they're LARPing or role playing a Scream movie.
Yeah.
It's very weird how that happens. It's like, okay, you have a really interesting opening sequence, which does kind of change the game a little for this franchise. But then once you're in it, you're just in like, hey guys, it's like they all talk to each other. Hey guys, we're in a Scream movie. Okay, so I know what's up. We're gonna do this. We're all gonna gather. Oh my God, there's a killer.
Yeah.
Let's get the core friend group. Okay, one of you're all suspect. So I'm also going to be suspicious while also being friendly with you. At some point, we're going to gather together. At some point, we're all going to be picked off. At some point, there's going to be meta commentary about how this movie relates to the state of movies. Like, what are we? We're a legacy sequel? Okay, all bets are off. It feels very strange because I think the last movie had a good balance of like introducing new things and playing with the old conventions. And this one just feels like they're kind of like going through the motions in a way. And it didn't feel particularly like thrilling or exciting. And another thing is that it just didn't feel like these characters actually lived in a world, right? It felt like almost like a Rick and Morty sketch or something from a parody of these movies. It was like, yes, I'm going to college now. Look at me. I am a college student. I'm your sister following you in college. We never actually see people do any. We never see people go to class. We never see, the main character, Sam. She's supposed to be doing 2 jobs and like really struggling to like be here for her sister. We never see any of that humanity of these characters. And I think the weakness of Scream 5 was those characters. Like a lot of the new kids didn't care for him. Mm-hmm. They all died. There was like one good kill, the kid in the kitchen waiting for his mom. That was fun in the last movie. But I think the weakness of the last movie was the characters. And now they were like building more on those characters. And at least they kept the ones that were interesting. But I think at the same time, what is so great about Scream, what's so great about Wes Craven's movies is that there is a deep sense of psychology to them. Like he is always somebody who's thinking about, like, okay, how is the protagonist like dealing with this situation? What is the deeper psychological elements going on to their character? Like what are the themes of the story? And it feels like the theme of this movie is like, the theme is let's be a Scream sequel. So we're going to do a lot of things that have been done in Scream sequels, and it just felt weirdly repetitive. So there are twists, and I think some of that is really, kind of surprising. So I think that part felt like a letdown for me. And also, this movie is set in quote unquote New York City, and I don't mind when other cities do this, but at least give me something. New York City is more than one bodega and one subway car.
It is?
Go to a location. Go to a street. Have Ghostface in Times Square or something. Do something with this great like setup you gave for yourself. And
it's to that point. It seems very obvious they did not actually film in New York City.
Yeah, they filmed in Montreal, and everyone's talked about it. So I don't hate it that a movie does that. Hey, Ghostbusters. I think like a third of Ghostbusters is filmed in LA, like in backlots. So you can have the spirit of where you're trying to set this thing, and there's so much potential for bringing Ghostface into New York. It just feels squandered here because it felt like, I think partially this movie felt rushed. It felt like they had to get the sequel out pretty quickly, and they didn't really have the time or the care or maybe even the budget to actually get to New York for some things. So that just felt like a wasted opportunity, because I do love a good horror movie, like actually set in New York, actually giving you a great sense of place. And this absolutely did not have that. So the way that Montreal feels like, a fake New York, at times this feels like a fake Scream movie. I still had fun with it. I wanted more.
All right. Devindra, not a huge fan of this movie. Jeff Cannata.
I still liked it.
Yeah.
I still liked it. Just disappointed.
So curious what you thought about Scream 6.
Well, Dave, I guess you could say what I thought about Scream 6 is best summed up in the form of a limerick. It turns out that after spending 5 movies with people pretending to each be Ghostface, even in a new place, it's hard to find a good ending.
Oh,
interesting.
Nice.
Okay. And I should point out, by the way, we're going to be very non-spoilery in our main review, but we will reveal things that are in the poster for the movie. So if you don't want to know what's in the poster,
the font,
the font,
everything in the poster,
the kerning,
the opening scene of Scream can be spoiler materials. It's such weird. It's such a weird thing.
Yeah, the opening scene is kind of a spoiler. So like we're going to try to avoid all of that. But yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
I also had some fun with this movie. I think there are great sequences in this movie.
Yes.
I think there are some really strong sequences, like edge of my seat. Ooh, this is fun. But I think it falls apart at the end. I think the end is patently ridiculous. And it's interesting. I think that the two of you both kind of talked about it as being this sort of LARPing of a Scream franchise, because I feel like at this point, that's the kind of the theme of the movies. And it's not unique to this one, but at this point, like, people assuming the mantle of Ghostface is kind of LARPing as Ghostface, right? It's some new person or people or whatever the case may be, trying to be Ghostface this time.
I would have loved that sort of actual meta commentary, Jeff. Like, go cabin in the woods. Like, oh, there was always a group in the woods, and there's always something happening. Something like that.
Right, but I think at a certain point, it sort of just the logic of it just completely falls apart. And so even going into a Scream movie, you have to, at this point, six installments in. It literally makes no sense that someone would attempt this thing again. You know what I mean? And again, that's not unique to 6. That happens last time, and it's at a certain point, it's like, why are we doing? What's the charade here? And I think this movie accentuates that, and we'll get to why in spoilers. But I think it makes even less sense that anybody would take the time to do all the things you need to do to be Ghostface yet again, and fail yet again. It's a fun premise for this franchise. I like the fact that we have a slasher movie where the slasher is iconic, and yet it's also a mystery of who it's going to be every time. I just don't think that the payoff this time was satisfying at all.
Because it wasn't.
But there are some fun. I think there are some fun sequences. I had a good time with some fun things, but I agree that being in Manhattan that was supposed to be like we're really one-upping this franchise by taking it into the city.
Next level, baby.
All of this could have taken place in Woodsboro, and it wouldn't have mattered.
Excuse you, Jeff. I don't think they have subways in Woodsboro.
They don't have parks in which you can display the Manhattan skyline.
Digitally.
That would not be the subway sequence. Would not be one of the sequences that I think was a great sequence in this movie. I think like Devindra, I had some fun with it where I didn't feel like this was a waste of time, like Sick, for example. I thought Sick was a complete waste of my time.
The actual Kevin Williamson movie.
Kevin Williamson.
Exactly. Yeah. So I don't think, he is necessarily the key to making a great slasher film.
Yeah. It was Wes Craven. It was always Wes Craven.
Maybe it was. Yeah. I actually had a good time with this to a certain extent, but at a certain point, it's also like, boy, you really have to stop caring about any of this movie's logic or characters or at this point, we've abandoned most of our 99% of our characters. We're in so it bears very little resemblance to anything it used to be other than the premise, which also feels like it's collapsing under the weight of its own, ridiculousness.
Well, I'm just going to come out and be the most positive person on this podcast.
Brave.
About Scream 6. Here's the thing. Let's say a few things, okay? And then I'd love to get the spoilers. First of all, it is known from the trailer and from the press and from the poster that Neve Campbell's character of Sydney is not in the movie. The reason
she deserved her happy ending, David.
The reason
why would you want to take that away
with
from
Mark?
her?
Remember Mark?
Remember that guy? The reason for that is because Neve Campbell does not believe she was offered an amount of money in accordance with how much she contributed to the franchise.
Yeah, more power to her.
That sucks. Like, that sucks that they didn't give her enough money to do that. She talked about how she didn't want to walk onto set every day and feel undervalued. Like, very understandable. And she's like, if I was a man and had been the protagonist of 5 hit, movies that grossed like billions of dollars, I would be offered more money than I was offered for Scream 6. completely support Nev Campbell, whatever she wants to ask for. And it sucks that they didn't give her the money that she felt she was owed. I do think that this movie, plot-wise, to the extent it has a plot, does benefit from not being like trying to move on to the new crew.
It probably didn't need Sydney at all.
Right, exactly. Like because otherwise it would have felt like completely tied to the past. And
Hard
they're like,
disagree.
Hey, if you want this franchise to like even have a chance of moving on and evolving, you need to bring in a whole new cast.
You could have Sydney and her family going to a Broadway show, and Ghostface appears again.
Actually, honestly,
that'd be great.
If they'd had
that would
like
be really funny.
If the opening had been,
Ghostface on Broadway,
Sydney goes to Ghostface on Broadway and gets killed, and like do that.
Yeah.
Stab kill Broadway. Her off.
Stab,
But not even necessarily like actually stab and not necessarily like deflate a mouse or something, Batman-esque, but like let's go with like just anything on Broadway. And like just like there are so many different ways that this could have been interesting. And all of it was squandered. All of it.
She's sitting in the theater and the thing's about to start and the lights go down and there's a conspicuous empty seat next to her. And then you hear, excuse me. And then Ghostface sits down next to her. And she's like,
well,
stab.
I mean,
and then
there could have been a, go ahead, Ariel.
Think about how they did it in Scream 2. Like it doesn't have to be in the theater per se, but it can also play on that. It can also play on this issue of kind of class and accessibility to media, especially after the pandemic and everything that we've been dealing with. And, you have to go to the theater to see these movies and all of this stuff and what isn't appropriate, so on and so forth, yada, yada, yada. There are a million different directions that they could have taken the film going experience, which is usually at the heart of this. And yet, I digress.
And yet, Gail and Sydney are doing a podcast. They're in a podcast booth. You don't know who the engineer is. The engineer is
doing a true crime podcast.
Okay. And I'm just going to put this. I'll put this out there, and then we can get to spoilers. Which is that a lot of people, not just Jeff, have complained about how terrible the ending of this movie is, and I'm just going to go on record and saying I have found very few of the Scream movies to have satisfying reveals for the whodunit.
As far as Scream sequels go, it is on par.
Maybe one or two out of the Scream movies, I've been like, I've gotten to the end and been like, wow, that was a satisfying ending.
Scream 4 had a really good.
Most of the Scream endings are bad in my opinion. So like for me, this one was like, oh, this is just this is par for the course of like, I didn't expect anything more. Now, I will agree with you that
so many questions.
The original Scream was great because it's like we're commenting on the nature of horror movies. We're revitalizing the slasher genre. We're having smart characters and so on. This movie doesn't quite live up to those standards, but it's well made, solid slasher flick, and it's kind of in the Scream template in a way that I found to be personally pleasing. But hey, I understand if you're like if you're comparing it to Scream 1, you're like this movie is a pale shadowing imitation, a shambling version of its former self's corpse. And I understand that. But I'm also hey, if we're gonna have Scream movies in our lives, this one wasn't a bad one to have, in my opinion.
I mean, it is. It's a burger you get on the sidewalk compared to a steak. Like something like you still eat it. It still fills you up.
Still can be good.
One thing I want to say, like watching this movie, I did have a feeling like it's Radio Silence is the group that did this movie. The co-directors did Ready or Not. That's why certain people are in this movie too. That's kind of fun. I'm getting a feeling of like younger, or at least up and coming horror directors. They always feel like they have seen a lot of horror, right? They have the good kills, they have the good set pieces in mind, and I really do miss the days of like a Wes Craven, where it's like, well, I'm gonna scare you, but I'm also gonna like really dive into the psychology of these characters, and that's what's always been really interesting about. Didn't he actually have a background in psychology? I believe too. But that's Nightmare on Elm Street. That's Scream. That's Red Eye. Red Eye, great movie. I need to get that 4K. But I just feel like we are seeing movies of people who are like, I really like movies. Here's another movie of a thing I liked. Rather than stretching, giving us something.
I mean, that said, I think this movie does really bring some great kills. I think there are some really great gory kills. It's one of the gorier Scream movies.
Yes, I did ask for that. I think,
and if that's what you're looking for, I think you're going to get it. Okay, anyway,
I would like to sum up Dave's review as as Scream movies go. This is one.
This of all the Scream movies I have seen, this is one of them.
This one has the highest number.
This is one of them. This is one of them. Okay, let's do spoilers for this movie starting right now. I want to say I really enjoyed the beginning of this movie.
Yeah, I clapped when I saw Samara Weaving. It's like, yeah, okay.
Samara Weaving was there, but also like literally the very first shot of the movie opens with a phone ringing, and somebody picks it up, and they're at a restaurant, and you realize it has nothing to do with the plot. And I thought that was a nice little clever,
The cold opens to the Scream movies have become my favorite part. Well, I mean, I think they always were my favorite part of Scream movies, but I mean, from the very first movie. But I like how what they've evolved into is this dialogue with the audience of trying to subvert expectations. It's a big, I know that you know that I know that you know.
Yes.
It's very playful. You know that a phone is supposed to ring. You know there's going to be an interaction on the phone. You know somebody's going to die. It's always trying to trick you into thinking you think you know, and then trying to subvert that expectation. And I thought this movie did it in a really clever way. At a certain point, it's like, I can imagine the screenwriter for subsequent Scream films is always thinking to ourselves, what haven't we done in that cold open? Like we've literally stepped through like 14 people. Which Scream was it where they like stepped through all these different people? And
that was 4.
So smart. I love that one. But anyway, I thought this one was great. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. And I love, and then obviously Samara Weaving, love her, but then she's killed off, and then what? The person who killed her is then killed off immediately? What?
Tony Revolori?
What?
Well, like
the Grand Budapest guy?
Even just the fact that they actually showed who the killer was right off the bat, that kind of set up this really interesting potential, and then they did nothing with it.
Yeah.
And that's like a throwaway.
I feel like this first scene also encapsulates a lot of the problems too, right? Because we're spending a couple of minutes with Samara Weaving in the restaurant, having this like really this cute conversation with this guy. He's like, come outside to help find me. So I'm like, you've never met this guy before.
No.
You really? You're going to
cross the
street.
You're going to continue walking
to this alley.
into the alley?
Yeah. Keep walking.
It is so painfully unrealistic.
Yes.
Which is like, let's be honest, it's a Scream movie. It's not exactly going for like stark realism here. But at the same time, all of the characters in the Scream movies have always been rooted in some level of reality. They are grounded in some believability. Samara Weaving's character is actually kind of insulting, because like she's literally a professor of this subject matter, and they even had to include it as a line, like, "Oh, you dumb bitch! Like, shouldn't you have known what this was going to be?" And like really, like seriously, this is what you're choosing to do with this? You didn't think to maybe have it so that she catches on and is like, "No, this has been fun, but maybe we'll meet up another time." And they're like, and you play with that. Like, play with the intellect of the character. Play with the intelligence of the character. That's always what Craven used to do. That's always what Williamson did with his scripts. This does none of that. It treats all of the characters like they're idiots, and like the audience is dumb for liking it. Yeah. And it's so effective. I will. Yeah. I have
please,
feeling
let loose, Ariel. But go ahead, Jeff.
Well said. Very, very well said. And I do agree that would have been superior. And I applaud your articulation of that, because I think it's absolutely spot on. I just had enough fun with the second layer.
Yes.
After you think, oh, that was kind of dumb. The whole time I was right there with you going like, hey lady. But the moment the mask comes up and you go, oh, we've just seen a Scream kill, and we've just been revealed, and now the Scream killer is the one getting the phone call. I thought that playing with the audience was worth
that's
it.
It's a fun idea. But I agree with Ariel that it doesn't really go anywhere. Like I was like, it's going to be, because I remember when, I think it was Scream 4 that was like, it had the multiple beginnings. Is that the one that had the multiple beginnings, right? Like,
yes, it is.
But it felt like, this is going to bring in some meta commentary on how, revealing the killer is going to be a big deal. Like, this is like Poker Face style, where they show you who the killer is in the first minute, and there's some subversion of the trope in that way. Nope, it's just another killer. It's killers all the way. It's Ghostface all the way down, basically.
Ghostface all the way down.
And he would have gotten away with it too if it hadn't been for you meddling kids. It's literally like pulling off the mask in a Scooby-Doo mystery.
On that note, I do. Sorry, go ahead, Ariel. Go ahead. Yeah.
What I was going to say is, bouncing off of something that you said, David, is that it's an interesting idea. It's a neat concept. That's all it is. They don't have any substance behind any of it. All like this entire movie, it feels like a novel concept built on a novel concept built on a novel concept. It's not actually a story. Yeah. Like even in part 3, and I will always come back to part 3 because it's of the original 4, we'll say, it was the of all the ones by Williamson and or Craven, as
widely regarded as the worst out of that set. Yes, I think.
Yeah. Right? And yet at the same time, like, what makes it weak is the fact that it doesn't answer its why is very, very flimsy. So like, why are we here? Why is this happening? It's a stretch. It's a little flimsily assembled. It's kind of, haphazard. It doesn't flow quite as well. The first one, the why is so strong. Why are we there? Because Sydney's mom had an affair and these misogynistic pricks killed her and da-da-da-da-da-da, and all this stuff happens. Like, you have a hard framework to base your plot off of. And then there is psychology that comes in off of that. There's character progression. There's all of this development that makes sense. The second one, same thing. And like the second one is actually part of what made me so mad about this one, was because it was Billy's mom. And then in this instance, we get Dermot Mulroney playing a father whose son was a killer like Billy, who was killed. And instead of coming after them himself, he decided to throw his other kids in harm's way. Like, he's pissed because his child died. He's not going to use his kids as pawns in a very dangerous, lethal fucking game. That's not
nothing about that makes sense. It feels like they want to have fun, right? Like, you can tell the Radio Silence guys have these great set pieces in mind. They want to have fun, but it's the work. Doing the work to get there always feels like it's a little shorthand.
I mean, I first of all, I feel bad. You know what I was about to say before Ariel unleashed that very articulate description of the movies was, boy, guys, doesn't the new Ghostface mask look cool? I'm like, new mask look good, and then Ariel's like, the psychology of the movies is so, there's a continuum along which they exist, and I'm just like, new mask good.
Already know, Dave. Not since MILF Island has your bar been lower as to what you enjoy watching.
Okay, MILF Island is a fictional show. MILF Manor is what you're thinking of, Jeff.
No,
but okay.
You'll forgive me for not having that canonically correct in my mind.
I continue to maintain that, most of the screams are pretty unrealistic in terms of like, the same group of people just happen to encounter psychopathic killers who are good at murdering lots of people. Sure. It's like, okay, what?
No, but the point is that I think this is kind of the point that Ariel was making, is that there has been a reason as to why the same people have been at the center of this, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we get this weird, like, use your superpower of being the daughter of a serial killer for good.
Oh my God.
It's so bad, right? It's so bad.
Ariel, what are your Ariel's having a lot of feelings about it right now. What are your thoughts?
It's so bad. So we spent an entire franchise dealing with a daughter's inability to escape the sins of the mother, and the idea of, her constantly being punished for this, and then punished for being a survivor of it in the fourth one. And yes, it was a bit of a stretch when we got to the third movie. And, like you guys were saying, we had the first villain made sense. It was Billy and Stu because he needed a hand. And then you have the mother and some random film nerd and whatever. And then you get the brother, and it's like, okay, we're getting a bit of a stretch here. But then by the time you get to the fourth one, it starts kind of turning things on its head. And instead of just being this, and I say just with air quotes, but instead of it just being, the sins of the mother, it's the sins of the survivor. And you get that interesting narrative and dynamic that's coming in. This is, after all of that framework and groundwork set, where Sydney is being punished. She is literally being punished for what her mother did endlessly, ad nauseum. Now we get a main character who is a redemptive arc for the killer in the first movie, who keeps coming back. Why do we keep seeing Skeet Ulrich? Why is he there? Like, this isn't necessary.
I can't defend it. I can't defend
no,
it. I mean,
no
also, like, why does he? What's hilarious about Skeet Ulrich is he has aged, but he's wearing the same clothes in the first movie.
But they de-aged him.
Yeah, they did de-age him.
No, well, I think he's meant to look older. I feel like they de-aged him in the last movie, but not in this one. He looks like normal.
No, they did.
Okay, all right, well. I guess
Ariel can tell, okay?
I don't think we're supposed to think he's older, Dave. I think
okay. Well, that was just me then. That was bad de-aging then, in my opinion.
But it does feel like we have this superhero who is sort of the, Venom or the anti-hero who has the evil, is using the evil in them for good, right? She's got the superpower, which is I can also be a serial killer, but I'm only going to kill.
Yeah. It's not a superpower, but it would be an interesting twist, like if they kept going with this, like a Dexter type of thing where she is like the vigilante, like, actually helping people that the cops can't find. But who knows? Then it's not a Scream movie. It's something else.
But that's also the thing. Like, that would be really interesting. But she's not a vigilante who's hunting people who are hunting other people. She's just trying to stay alive. She's trying to protect herself.
Yeah.
But in order to validate her as a character, in order to give her any level of substance, they have had to give her some semblance of her father. She doesn't exist without Billy. Without Billy, she is not a character. And so you've created this, like, and it's a Latina character who has mental health issues, and like that is a huge amount of representation. And yet you've made her entire existence dependent on the villain of the first movie, who we've not paid attention to at all since the first movie, and who doesn't need to be an issue anymore. Like, take it somewhere else. Make it, like, even in the first one, in the fifth one, I remember after seeing it, I'm like, it should have been Tara. Tara should have been the killer. And she faked her own attack in order to get her sister to come back as like an act of vengeance, because she was so hateful towards her sister for ruining their family. That makes sense. But just to have like, oh no, we're just random film nerds on Reddit. Like, isn't that super meta? No. Yeah. That's not meta. That's just weird. Like, you're taking a Reddit thread and putting it on film, and that's not clever.
Yeah, I think all of the film commentary stuff in this movie is so tired and uninteresting, and it's sad because, as you pointed out, Ariel, that's some of the most fun stuff in this franchise is how it's kind of commenting on movies in general, and this notion of like, oh, we're in a Lego sequel, so all bets are off. It's just that whole monologue doesn't make sense, and I think there was an opportunity there to get to something about, I mean, I don't know what, but they seem to be setting up something about like film memorabilia and the collector thing with this big room, but none of it is followed through on at all. The collection of all of the stuff is just like, oh, wouldn't that look cool as an end place to have our big fight, rather than actually saying something about any of it.
Yeah. Again, you have that like really interesting concepts and these nifty ideas, but there's nothing behind it.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of nifty ideas, I thought it was cool that the idea that the guy from the last movie had like made these sweeted home movies of Stab, basically, and like that's what you were seeing projected on the screen is what I could tell. If you're not watching the video version, Ariel is reacting with disgust to what I've just said.
It's just perplexed and flames on the side of my face.
But yeah, I think I would agree that there is a missed opportunity to comment on how obsessives, people who are like obsessed with films and in the fan culture, like how that can be like really toxic in some way and can lead to like violent and dangerous tendencies, perhaps, or I don't know. You know, there's probably some area to explore that wasn't explored.
There's something there. Yeah.
We haven't talked about Kirby at all, guys. Kirby's back in the movie.
Oh my god. I'm so mad.
I'm triggering Ariel like left and right now. Ariel, what did you think of Kirby's return to the Scream franchise?
Oh my god, I wanted so much more for her. Why was she wasn't like, oh god, there's feelings and thoughts and again flames on the side of my face. But okay. So yeah, we would have to take this like step by step and I'd be like, here's what's wrong with this one, okay? It's just Kirby was so good. She's such a great character in 4. And it's not because she's a chick who happens to also be a film nerd who knows her shit about horror. It's because she's a well thought out, well written character. She has substance behind her. There's motivation behind the character. You know why she's there and you understand why she's doing things. And more importantly, and this is not something that you can say about pretty much any of the new characters, you care about her. You give a shit. Because these new characters, you don't care about them. And somehow they made me not care about Kirby. And I'm angry about that.
Yeah.
Because I care about Kirby. I care very much about Kirby. When
we have been asking for justice for Kirby for a decade now. And we got it. Sort of.
And you had, oh my God, you had this opportunity and she became a federal agent? Like, really? That's where you're going with this? That's what?
You know, she saw Silence of the Lambs and was like, that looks good.
I can't believe I need to defend.
I'm going to be Clarice Starling.
All right, I'm just going to say, first of all, it's clever because in Scream 4, Kirby theoretically was killed, but you never see what happens to her ultimately. So it's like, what actually happened to Kirby? We find out in this movie that she was alive the whole time, although she died for a few minutes, and then grew older and then became an FBI agent. Now, I can actually understand if you were that traumatized and almost killed, you might want to dedicate your life towards stopping monstrous psychopaths like this. And for me, I'm just going to say the main sister relationship in the movie worked. Like, I actually thought there was enough there between Tara and Sam for this to feel like, hey, this feels like representative of what siblings can argue over. And yeah, it's a little bit cheesy of like, you have to let me go. And she's talking about literally letting her go to stab that guy in the face, but also letting her go in terms of her possessiveness over her sister. And that's just like classic movie action standing in for character development.
Build that out for me, Dave. I don't know how.
Are you sure? Because I think the part where Jenna Ortega looks up and says, "You have to let me go," was a big clue,
wink,
Jeff.
and she winked and she pointed at the knife and then drew a line with the knife to the guy's head.
If only the movie had some way to get through that impenetrable theme that is obscured by all of the nuance and.
It's so true. It's so true. You're right.
I mean,
you're right.
So
it could have done a better
nuance.
job of it. Anyway, go ahead, Ariel.
You go ahead, Ariel.
Yeah.
No, I was just saying, oh yeah, so much nuance. Go ahead. Believe me.
So the Kirby thing. The Kirby thing feels like what really kind of hurts this movie and maybe what Radio Silence is doing overall. Like I don't think they're trying to understand these characters. It's like, oh, people want Kirby back. That's cool. That's fun. We could play with Kirby. We could dress her up in FBI clothes and bring her back and the fans will be happy. And it feels like a lot of that again and again. Like I don't really get these characters. Like who is Tara? You know, like who is she as a person other than somebody who Sam is always trying to save and is annoyed that Sam is trying to save her? Like, I don't understand who these people are or why we should care about them that much. Even though I want this representation here, it just feels like they don't quite know what to do with these characters. And when this movie tries to even like touch psychology, like there is an actual scene in a psychiatrist's office played by Henry Czerny, which makes no absolute sense. Makes no goddamn sense. Like Sam opens up he's like, open up to me, Sam. Sam opens up to him. He's like, oh no, not like that. She didn't say anything threatening. She didn't say she was going to go kill somebody. He was like, no, I got to call the cops on you now for no reason, and kicks her out.
Look, if you had lived the life that Kittredge lived in the IMF, you would also be wary of serial killers.
Yeah,
okay, that's
true.
all I'm saying. Anyway, okay, fair enough. I have tried, not my best, but a little to defend the movie.
I mean, listen, I can say good things. I think those individual set pieces, what you got to turn off your brain. You got to turn off your brain enough to be like, what? This guy sure is hopping around a bodega for a while with a shotgun before the cops appear in New York City. Or this subway, sure he's losing lights a lot, except that never happens in an actual train car because this is in 1971.
That drove me nuts.
Oh man! But you could set it up. You set it up a really cool sequence where the lights go on and off, and he's coming closer and closer. But it makes no sense. It's kind of cool, but yeah.
I mean, you know, to quote from to paraphrase Tom Cruise in Collateral, you know, guy dies on a subway, no one notices. And that is it does play. I like how that scene played with the terror of this idea of like you could get stabbed to death on a subway and no one would know about it.
If it held for 10 seconds of just like, and the movie even like kind of does is there's somebody sitting next to her on the chair as she's being stabbed. There are people all around her who don't notice, but we barely get any time to kind of register that because the movie has to keep going, you know?
Yeah.
Ariel, go ahead. You didn't like the subway sequence?
No, the subway, I like the concept of the sequence. Again, you've got these neat ideas and that's it. It's like, wouldn't it be cool if we saw the killer's face at the very beginning of the movie? Yeah, totally. Wouldn't it be cool if we had this sequence on a train and he's like getting closer to you and like it happens in public? Yeah, that would be super cool. Wouldn't it be cool if we had this collector thing and for some reason we used a lot of set elements from Saw? Yeah, sure, why not? But like, that's all it is. It's just this piecing together.
Stab, I think is what you mean, right? Stab.
Mm-hmm.
You said Saw.
No, Saw. Yeah, there are some
like
elements.
A Saw setup. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
There are some set elements inside that. Like in the theater. Yeah. That like the gate looks like the gate from Saw 2.
Oh, I see. The structure itself. I see. Gotcha.
Yeah, the actual physical.
Yeah.
But like I mean, even. We have characters that we don't give a shit about, and they're being attacked viciously. And the viciousness and the gore and the brutality winds up not mattering because it's happening to characters we don't give a shit about. It's like Halloween 5. Like, why are we? Nobody cares. Nobody cares. And yet we're here, and like, you know, you have to watch all of these kids being killed, and like. Yeah, I'm so like, again, flames on the side of my face. That's just going to be my slogan for this.
Yeah.
But like, we have the Meeks kids, the Meeks twins. Mm-hmm. And that makes me absolutely insane. Why couldn't they just be their own characters? They didn't need to be connected to Randy in any way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. In the 5th movie, we did not need them to be legacy characters. And now we have to like stick with them and the core 4, which is cheesy to a point that it's useless. And Gale is a figment of her former self. There's barely the only point where we get some of Gale in like actual like the character in this movie is when she puts him on hold.
I thought that sequence, that was my favorite sequence of the whole movie, is when we just have Courtney Cox defending herself in her home, and her nameless hot ass boyfriend just eats it for no reason. Like, we don't know anything about him. Doesn't care. But I thought that whole sequence was my favorite in the movie, and I'm like, oh, I get it, because I actually have some connection to this character, and I care about who they are from all these other movies, and she's doing cool stuff, and I thought that was great. I also have an issue with. And I know this is a genre trope, and I should get over it because it's about suspension of disbelief. But when your big reveal is that a character that could have easily killed you many, many times instead decided to dress up in a costume and chase you around with a knife, for what? To what end?
It wouldn't count. It wouldn't count. You know,
it wouldn't count. But
it wouldn't count.
That's the thing.
It wouldn't count as death.
But that's the thing that doesn't make any sense anymore in these movies. Like, there's a point when these movies are about a reverence for the theatricality when these movies are about a killer who's obsessed with scary movies and creating a scary movie aesthetic in the real world, then I go, oh, that makes sense. They're doing it to achieve something that is important to them. But literally the only thing we get is a dad who wants revenge and could have easily gotten it numerous times, but instead decides to have all of this crazy costuming and chasing around with a knife for no reason whatsoever.
And recruiting his other kids too.
Yeah. Well, and faking really his daughter's death. His daughter's death.
Also, where did that body come from?
Where did the body come from?
Doesn't matter.
He mentions I had to swap out a body, and that's it.
He just pulled a fresh one out of the morgue, basically.
He yadas that away, which is pretty great. But my point is, like, who is being fooled in that moment? The audience. That is the only people that are being fooled by the faking of the death. It is only there to fool an audience. No one in the context of the movie. It is so much effort to do something that gains him nothing. It gains nothing except to fool the people watching.
Why is Ghostface hanging out in his daughter's room menacingly? You know, like,
yes.
What? He's not.
I mean,
she knows who she's in on the plan. There's no sense of that as you're watching the hot guy from across the street trying to like get their attention.
Yeah.
Doesn't make
sense. On that note, why do we have the hot guy from across the street? I mean, I get it that we need like some kind of a red herring, but like if you're going to make a really half-assed attempt at, you know, it's the new boyfriend because you already did that in the previous movie. Do you have to? Can you just leave that one off? Just leave that at home. We don't need it. But like,
go ahead. Yeah.
It. I can't even remember. There was.
Yeah. Well, here let me put this out there. You know, 80% of the time on this podcast, it's the other guys defending something, and I'm taking a crap on it. So it's weird to me. This is a very weird dynamic for me. But here's one thing that did annoy me about the movie is. There is this scene where Chad is, you know, the Mason Gooding character is stabbed like approximately 50 times.
Shot really well. It looks really cool.
Yeah,
you know?
It's super cool.
And then it's like, oh wow, I can't believe they killed this guy.
Dead.
He did. And then no, it's okay. He's alive at the end.
No, nobody's dead. His sister is stabbed twice in the gut. Is running after him at the end of the movie, doing cartwheels into the ambulance. Totally recovered. To be fair, this is a franchise that has often brought people back from certain death. Sure. You know, many times, like Dewey Cox was like, not Dewey Cox, Dewey the cop, not Dewey Cox from Walk Hard. Dewey was, almost killed in the first. He was almost killed in the first movie, and it's like he came back in the second. So this franchise has often done that, but like with the Chad killing particularly, I was like, they're not playing fair with that. Like he was stabbed. He was clearly meant to be like completely wiped out. There's no way anyone could survive that. Yeah.
That one did annoy me. So
that's this entire movie though. His sister, I thought was wiped out. Is Gail dead? Guys, it seems like Gail was
unclear.
Gail was nobody died. Dead. Nobody of consequence actually died in this movie.
Yeah, they did the inverse of what they did in part 2 with Randy, and instead of taking beloved characters off the list, they literally just killed people no one gives a shit about, like the new girlfriend and the daughter who didn't actually, the roommate who didn't actually die, and like very few other people. But then you've got I don't know, it's a whole thing.
But the bummer is they want to have it both ways, right? Yes. They want you to have the moment where you think all the core 4 are going down, all the core 4 are getting picked off, and even Courtney Cox gets stabbed. You know, we watched Dewey Cox. we watched poor John C. Reilly last installment. And now we're gonna see the last of the legacy characters get it. No, just erase that at the end. It's a little bit
pretty irritating
too.
Pretty irritating, but anyway.
When Mindy gets stabbed, she gets stabbed, and he like lifts. He's deep eviscerating her. Yeah. And like that's fine. I like the character. I think she has room to grow. I think they've done absolutely nothing with her, and they could. And I think they've done nothing with her brother, and they could. So happy they're alive, but I'm kind of upset about it because at the same time, I feel like
mad
they're
that
not going to
she
do anything.
survived. I'm more annoyed that she literally pops up out of nowhere at the end. It's like, guys, I'm fine. Those gut wounds, those like 6-inch deep gut wounds, totally fine.
Yeah.
I'm gonna run after this ambulance right now. Peace.
Yeah.
Like
Well,
when Dewey Cox gets stabbed multiple times, never letting that go.
Yeah,
Even when he's being carted off in the ambulance, he's not like happy-go-lucky running around. He's like, oh, thank God I'm fucking alive. Oh, great. But he's like, he looks worse for wear. He's not just, like doing cartwheels into an ambulance like Mindy is. But the whole thing here is that they keep trying to connect it back to Woodsboro instead of realizing that Woodsboro never mattered. Woodsboro was never the main focus. Woodsboro was just the setting. The main purpose of this was Sydney and Billy kind of trying to avenge his family and get back at, Sydney and her mother for having ruined his life, presumably. So that's the core of why this happened. And then they got fixated on Sydney, which granted it worked. And they kept coming up with very good reasons. Why are we back here? Why are we looking at this? They came up with good reasons. They were able to answer that, and they were able to incorporate it into the fabric of what horror is and what horror meant at the time and means for the day. They're grasping at straws here. There is no reason for this to connect to Woodsboro. Part 5 didn't need to connect. It could have taken place literally anywhere. It didn't need to connect to Billy Loomis. That was just an excuse to have Skeet Ulrich in it. If you actually ask, why is this here? There are very few answers to those questions because very little of it actually needs to be there. It's just an excuse to flex some muscles as like, look at how referential we can be. Mm-hmm. Look at, here's why we deserve to make a Scream movie because we've seen and loved X, Y, Z. We know this movie, what that happened. We know how this happened here and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. It feels like a flex more than an exercise in filmmaking. And that's such a shame because these guys have done really good work before. Like Ready or Not was, Ready or Not? Am I remembering correctly?
Ready or Not, yeah.
My brain.
Awesome movie.
Awesome movie. Brutally violent, but all of the violence is kind of just set dressing. On top of a well-written script with a great story, characters you give a shit about, or characters you are very eager to watch die. And yet, they didn't do that here. It's like they're haunted by the concept of Woodsboro, and they don't know how to move beyond it. Because you don't need Woodsboro, which is proven, but again, emulating Jason Takes a Boat Ride is a really weird flex. But they don't need Woodsboro. They don't need any of the legacy characters. Gail didn't need to be there. She pops in randomly, but she's the host of like a major daytime morning show. Like, why the fuck is she here?
She learns that she repeats herself from Scream 2. She doesn't learn anything because she writes the book and they hate her even though they were friends. Same thing.
And like, you had this beautiful wrapping up of the character in 5, even though you treated the character like shit in 5 and like didn't really let her sing. But here we are. And yet, you've put her back on her bullshit. Like, it just doesn't make sense. It's actually really fitting in that sense that they did kind of riff a lot on Jason Takes Manhattan because Jason Takes Manhattan was also terrible. But Jason Takes Manhattan is funny and it's entertaining. And it became kind of a cult phenomenon. This isn't that. And it's like they're trying to create that out of nothing. And that's not how it works.
Well, I think we can wrap it up there, Ariel. We'll give you the last word on Scream 6. No, it's cool. But here's the thing, guys. At the end of the day, despite literally everything we have just said over the course of the last hour, it is still pretty impressive that the directors, Matt Bettinelli-Olpin and Tyler Gillett, made a movie. And apparently made a movie in about 1 year.
In under a year.
Between when they, started shooting it and then now it's out in theaters and it is the #1 movie at the box office this weekend. I think one of the best openings for the franchise in general. So there will be more Scream movies in the future, whether we are ready or not. See what I did there? thank you so much for watching this video of the Filmcast. Check out these other videos that we have available, and be sure to hit like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon to get other videos from us in the future.
You can also go to thefilmcast.com to catch all of our audio podcast versions of all of our episodes.
And support this podcast at patreon.com/filmpodcast, where you can sign up for ad-free episodes and exclusive After Darks.
Thanks so much to everyone who makes the Filmcast possible.